we started something right before we went to the break about the 5 stages of grieving and the process, and so we want to continue with that. And I know it's going to be a blessing for you and those of you who just now joined us. Fred Kitchen is with us right now discussing these things. And the first one you said was what?
Denial.
That's the first stage.
That's the first stage. Okay. The first stage of grief is denial. And, you know, in denial, that's usually when someone just can't come to they can't accept what's happened to them. They just can't believe it.
Is it a mental thing? Is it like you just like disconnect yourself from the actual situation and what you're seeing and hearing and knowing you can somehow live in a different world?
Could be, could be. And some people do. Some people do. I mean, the denial is like I said, it's where they just basically say, you know, I can't believe this has happened to me. It's not happened to me. You know, and act and try to even live as though it's not happening.
You said that can go on for years.
It could.
What's the second stage that people can expect? And you said some of these they go through very quickly too. Some people just like that.
Anger.
Wow.
And, you know, the anger could be directed at the loved one who's passed away for leaving them. It could be...
Because they feel abandoned, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. It could be at others around them. It could be at themselves.
At God.
Yeah.
At God.
Because they get to step in. And,
absolutely, and we've probably heard that a lot over the years, that, you know, angry at God. And then the third stage would be bargaining. And bargaining is usually, typically it's a stage that's prior to the death. You know, if we know that someone is about to pass, we start bargaining. You know, we're like, you know, maybe with ourselves, maybe emotionally, maybe with doctors, maybe with God. Lord, please don't let this happen. If this don't happen, I'll do this. You know, and I think...
And then maybe there's a bargaining afterwards. I would think that people would say, you know, since this happened, I'm going to do this. I'm going to be better. It's almost like a amplified New Year's resolution almost, because people say, you know, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do better, especially if a parent passes away. I notice a lot of people do make another level of commitment to God, another level of commitment sometime to their family, or another level of commitment to themselves, that they're going to become a better person, right? Okay, so they begin to bargain at that point. And to try to do, what's the goal of bargaining?
Well, I think in their mind, it goes back to the denial a little bit. I think there's part of that in their mind. It's like, well, you know, if I can act like this isn't happening, and if I can kind of, in their mind, they think that they can make a deal.
Reverse it.
Okay, yeah, one thing is positioning themselves and putting themselves in a little bit different position, you know, where they can see it differently and maybe help it make sense, is what I kind of got from that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. And what's the next step?
We talked about denial and anger and bargaining, and the next step would be depression. And depression, you know, would be, you know, I don't care about anything, I don't care about anybody, I don't even care about myself. And, you know, I think we see that a lot.
This is the most evident one to the people around us, wouldn't you think? The other ones are more probably behind the scenes or internal. But this is
what are some of the signs of this then? It's like you're saying it's evident to us, like reclusiveness, pulling away. What would be some of the other things you've seen or witnessed?
Reclusiveness, you know, families or individuals that would quit paying bills, maybe showing up late for work, maybe not showing up for work.
At all?
Maybe not attending church anymore. When that's the place they really need to be. You know, those are all ways they're just, I guess, a drawing away.
Yeah, I was going to say a drawing away, like you said, but a withdrawing from life itself. Then, right?
Absolutely.
And, wow.
Absolutely. And then the fifth stage would be acceptance. You know, we've come to grips with what's happened. I understand that, you know, I've lost a loved one, and I accept this. I'm not happy with it, but I accept what's happened, and I'm willing to, once I reach that acceptance stage, I'm willing to go on and live my life.
Wow. And so the acceptance stage can be really way down the road for some. Others, it can come a little bit more quickly. But there are many people that haven't really gotten to that place where they can accept the fact that they no longer are going to see that person in this life. And they, you know, is acceptance, is that partially when we come to grips with the fact that we still have a purpose? You know, God left us here because there's more for us still to do.
Absolutely.
Their race is run, ours is still in process, and we must progress in order to even satisfy the fact that the loved one's gone away. I feel that kind of like when my dad left, for instance, I felt in my heart that I must do even greater things to not to make up for him, but to for the fact that I don't have him to take up those little pieces. So I must even do more. Maybe chart a new course and do more things. Maybe.
I agree. I think that acceptance part, exactly what you said, it kind of bestows in some of us, or instills in some of us, that purpose of, I got to do more. There's more for me.
There's more for me is maybe what I should say. Yeah.
Well, what about those stages? Are they all in that order, or are they in random order?
They could be in random order. They can come from, they kind of, I guess, emotionally fly all different directions. And they can come in any order with people. I mean, someone finds out that their mother has just passed away, they can automatically become angry. And, then maybe go through depression, so they're not in that order.
Do you have any help, except for, do we just let those processes happen in grief, or is there any way to, I don't want to use the phrase speed it up, but is there any way to make it get to where we can get to that acceptance stage?
Or does it we just need to go through those stages, and that's the right thing?
Yeah,
I think that's it. I think we've got to go through those stages. I think that's the healthy process. I think if we try to act as though one of those, if we act as though we're not angry, but yet in here, we are angry. We may not be verbalizing.
Were you taught, like I was, not to be angry?
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't question God.
Yeah, right.
Don't be angry at God.
Don't be angry at God. Don't be angry at anyone. Don't ever show anger. So really, and I like the scripture that says, "Be angry and sin not," because it says, "Be angry." I mean, that's not necessarily a commandment, but it's saying, be angry. I think there's a certain level of anger that helps you have resolve. And so angry, but don't sin. Don't let the anger become sin.
Right.
And so, is there a way to be angry in your thoughts patterns and still not sin? Like being angry at God is not proper, but being angry at the circumstances maybe is proper because it could lead to a solution. Correct? Or am I right?
No, I agree. Okay. I would say that you could be angry. I think we all have probably experienced anger, and we've lost a loved one. Sometimes we don't want to admit it publicly, but when we've lost loved ones, even myself personally, when I've lost loved one, there's some that you just wonder why this has happened to you, and you do get angry. You might be angry at yourself, you might be angry at your loved one, like we said, and it very well might be that we're angry at God, and that's when we start to questioning of God, why?
Well, you mentioned to us earlier, too, that you had even examples of people that had gone through the grief or had lost people. So what are some of those? Real-life examples, I guess.
Back in my experience, I've worked in funeral service, the funeral side, helping families for years, and I'm kind of on a different side now, but there was a couple instances. There was one instance in particular that I had written an article back in 1999, and I was telling my wife Amber it was ironic. This article was actually published in January of 1999, and here we are in January 2009.
Wow.
It's been 10 years, and it was about a young man that I come in contact with in a funeral home. He was 6 years old, and I'll never forget his name. Seth was his name. And Seth come into the funeral home. He had just lost his dad, and he come in with his mom for first visitation. And I learned a lot from this 6-year-old, and he was a very short 6-year-old. The article was titled "Grief from 3 Feet," because he was about 3 feet tall. And when he come into the funeral home, he was holding on to his mother's dress. He was hiding his face, shaking. He was scared. He was going through something that he had never been through, didn't understand the process he was going through. And I tried to, befriend this child. And later that evening, I was sitting in one of the chairs in the funeral home, and he actually nudged himself up to me. I think because we had a candy dish sitting there. I think that's what actually brought him there. But he nudged himself up, and we were able to have some conversation. And some of the things that he taught me, he says, these chairs are so big. To a child, 6 years old, the chairs were so big, and he talked about how the doors were so big, and he talked about how the ceilings were so high, and it taught me that even we as adults, everything is so magnified and amplified when we're going through grief. We have a lot of questions. Everything seems so big, seems so out of control, so out of focus that we just can't make heads or tails.
What a great parallel.
Yeah. So that was one of the stories that I had.
So when it comes to death, we're all like children, is what you're saying, right?
Absolutely.
Because we're not going to figure this one out.
No, we're not.